Official league tables of the nationalities and crimes of those awaiting deportation from the UK are set to be published for the first time. The plans are expected to be announced later today after Yvette Cooper there announced she was forcing them through. She's the Home Secretary. There were more than 19,000 foreign offenders awaiting deportation at the end of 2024. I should say she's married to her balls. He doesn't just follow her around. Husband and wife. Data is due to be published by the end of the year. It'll be made up of foreign nationals with prison sentences of 12 months or more who are subject to automatic deportation, and those with lesser sentences whose removal has been ordered for the public good. So, there we go. I mean, I thought we had these figures already, but apparently not.
So the figures exist, but they haven't been published as of yet. A lot of this is pressure by Robert Jenrick, who has basically been saying that we need to ensure that that information is publicly available. Now, I understand some of the criticism of this, but I think it's absolutely right to publish this data, purely because if people know that the information exists, but the government aren't publishing that data, that will only stoke racial tensions even more.
Okay.
Conversations about who these people are, where they've come from, are always going to happen. And ultimately, my view is, if you are a foreign national and you've committed a crime in the UK, you should be automatically deported.
OK, and we gather that the likely top three countries, treading carefully here, are Albania, Romania and Poland. Do you think we should know that?
What does it matter? I think whoever you are, if you commit crime, it's not a great thing. And I think what's happened here politically is Reform and Nigel Farage have parked their tanks on Labour's turf, and Yvette Cooper's gone, budge up, Nigel, let me get in, I'm going to join in on the fun. The quote in the Times says, ministers believe the data could provide ammunition in diplomatic negotiations to help secure deportation deals. I'm sorry, if I'm Albania, I'm not having them back if they're a criminal. How's that going to leverage their hand? And the other thing that was interesting is they seem to think this is going to push back against what Reform and Nigel Farage are doing. You're giving him what he wants. All it's going to do is sow further division in communities. Big groups of people of certain nationalities aren't going to be trusted, and you're going to tar the minority with tar the majority with the minority.
Yeah, because I suppose the people that you've got to be thinking about here, Reem, is the law-abiding Albanian who's arrived to work here as a dermatologist.
So you're absolutely right. I think it is important to have that conversation. That being said, the fact that the data exists, if the government were to say, no, we're not going to publish that data, I think that will increase those racial tensions even further. So remember with the Southport murders, how tragic and awful that was. The fact that Keir Starmer effectively misled the public, I don't want to say lied, but misled the public and did not reveal that it was an act of terrorism. They said it wasn't anything to do with terrorism. The fact that they withdrew that information from the public meant that the racial tensions, the physical tensions were so much worse than they otherwise would have been if they just told the truth. I think tell the truth, let us know all of the information, and this is one example of that.
Well, then why should the elected Prime Minister give in to an online cabal of fake news enthusiasts? This is the problem.
Why is it fake news?
Well, because people began contemplating where he was from. Was he Muslim? Was he a certain religion? Was he a certain ethnicity? And the vast majority of it was wrong, and people were in prison for that.
Yeah, we never quite got... It's difficult, isn't it? Because was it terror? Yes, it was. Yes. Was it a sort of Islamist thing? No.
I think that's important to know. I'm sorry, but as a member of the general public, knowing that these poor young girls were slaughtered by this absolute monster, I think it's important to know if this was an act of terrorism or not. And they found an Al-Qaeda training manual.
Good point. No, good point.
No, that's awful. But also, he wouldn't be in these figures. These are people that have already been convicted and ready for being deported. He was born here.
Sure, but Reem is arguing in favour of saying everything you know as quickly as possible. Jim in West Lothian, hello.
Hi.
Do we want this sort of the Hall of Shame here, do you think, of the countries that supply the most criminals?
I don't think it makes any difference to us. I think the bigger question is if they're convicted and awaiting deportation, what are they waiting for and why are they being deported?
What we mean, why is there any delay at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I suppose there's
straight on a plane and back to where they came from.
What Matthew, you said human rights?
Yeah, it's the people will be using, and the government have said this, the ECHR, to sort of try and build a case to say, well, if you deport me, you know, my child will not have me there and all this sort of stuff. I think what you need to do is, this is again about tackling immigration properly. You have at the moment people crossing the Channel many of which are refugees, many of which aren't. And I think you need to change the 51 Convention Act because you can't differentiate between those that are genuinely fleeing persecution and economic migrants who don't want to pay the visa fee.
But this is a little bit more narrowly focused. Thank you, Jim. After the break, more of your calls on whether it's right for the government to reveal the nationalities of foreign criminals. 020 7862 2222 is the number. And Brian is in Newport. Hi, Brian.
Hello.
Well, what do you think about this one, Brian?
I think we should let people know what the score is about who's doing what, because you've got a lot of people saying that these people coming across are criminals. You've got a lot of people saying that they're fleeing violence. And you've got to let the people know what's going on with these people so they can make up their own minds.
But does it matter what country they're from? That's the key thing.
Well, yeah, because if you've got piles and piles of people coming in from one country, and then people are going to say, well, look, why don't you start sorting out these people, because most of them are criminals.
Well,
Try and stop them coming. You can work on certain things. You can't... You need to get a grip of it, and you need to get a grip of it by starting to sort stuff out and not just go by.
It's true. We don't have a big problem, say, with crime by Canadians in this country, do we? You know.
Well, probably not. Well, we don't know. We haven't got the figures, but no, you're probably right. But I think the thing is, what we're saying explicitly here, or implicitly, is that because you're from a certain country, you're more likely to commit crime. I think people are people. Why are they committing crime? Is it because they're poor? Is it because they're ready to be deported and have nowhere to live?
I've got to say I disagree with you slightly. I mean, I've got to be very careful about this. I'm not saying that certain countries mean you're more likely to commit crime. However, there definitely is cases that there are certain cultures that are just not compatible with Western values, and some of those people, generally speaking, don't have the same respect for women. I mean, when you're thinking about this from this perspective, a quarter of sex crimes are committed by foreign nationals, and a lot of those people come from countries in which women aren't respected in the same way. So I'm not saying it's anything to do with them and the country in particular, but when the culture is different, and you've got women in this country that are dressed a bit less covered up, they're more likely
maybe to do with poverty as well. If most Americans who come here are very wealthy, they've flown across the world to come here. They're not likely to be robbing and burgling their way around Britain.
Well, possibly, but even on that stat, 1 in 4 is dreadful. We're still a minority. What does it say about our culture if 3 in 4 British-born people
Well,
are
there are much more
offences?
British-born people than there are foreign nationals, right? It's to do with proportion of population. The fact that there is a higher proportion of ethnic minorities that commit those crimes than white people, I think, does say something. Again, I'm not saying it's... I'm of North African
We've
heritage.
heard your riders, we've heard that. I mean, it is, if someone says, look, Albania tends to be a criminal culture, that would be, you get the Albanian embassy on saying, no, we're not, and there are many law-abiding Albanians. However, it does seem that Albanian criminals like to travel.
They do.
They do get around.
I think it's a question of integration as well, though, isn't it? I mean, ultimately, we don't want huge portions of a particular ethnic group in one place, because you end up getting ghettoisation. You end up getting huge portions of people in one small community. They don't integrate. They don't often speak English, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah, but I wonder if this supports Matthew's argument that actually once you say it's Romanians, for example, then you end up taking against them. Carol is in Derby. Carol, your husband, I think, had a brush with the law.
He did, yeah. My husband grew up in Texas. He was adopted as a baby and was taken to Texas. Now, he had been a very naughty boy at some point, and he had a drugs conviction against him, and they sent him right back to the UK.
Wow.
They didn't care whether he had family or not in the States, which they are all in the States. They didn't care. So if people are going to be deported from over here, they should take them straight back over. We've got people robbing and stealing over here and being let free to wander around the streets and do what they want.
Yeah, well...
it's totally unfair.
Part of that logic may be part of what gave us Brexit, actually, the idea that we need control over who is here if they commit crimes. But that's an amazing story where your husband was adopted by a Texan family?
His adopted father was Texan. His mum was English.
Right.
So he was actually born in the UK, in London, but he went to live over there.
And was it a serious drugs offence he did, or possession, or dealing, or what?
It was possession of, I think it was cocaine.
Okay.
He was taking somebody to give them to give cocaine to,
Okay.
and he was stopped. And because it was his car, he's the one that got done for it.
Yay.
That's really
But to just say, it's pretty brutal to say you're adopted by Texans, but you've committed a crime, so you're now going back to the UK.
Yeah, you're born in the UK, so off you go. I think Carol makes a really, really excellent point. Other countries will very happily deport British criminals that are over there back here. We should do the same. If you commit a crime in this country and you're not British, off you go.
I think there's something to be said for it in the fact that Jim in West Lothian said it, you know, why are they waiting? The government says that if you get 12 months, you get automatic deportation. Well, it's not very automatic, is it? You're either going or you're
Well,
not.
that's it. You should just the straight from the jail to the airport. But, things don't work like that.
Well,
and I remember Charles Clarke, who's the former Home Secretary, had to resign. This goes back 20 years, over the issue that he was suddenly asked what's happened to foreign criminals once they've been released, and he didn't know. And the answer is they'd all just been released and just wandering around.
Seriously.
And they had not kept tabs on any of them. So as a result of that, he came out. The reason I know this story, he came out with the famous defence, which was, as I'm the one who caused this mess, I'm the best person to clear it up, which didn't work and he had to resign. So, Sam in London, hello.
Hi, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm well. What do you think we'd have a league table? So it would be, let's say, number 1, Poland, number 2, Romania, number 3, Albania, let's say.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea because I think what we could then do is get close ties with those countries so we could actually stop the criminals coming here in the first place.
Well, the government already has the numbers, remember? So this is about, we've already got that option. It's about just the publicity.
Do we know when a Romanian's coming in if he's a rapist or a murderer? Do we already have that information?
You would hope so. You really would hope so.
Well, if they come here illegally, they don't. Sam's absolutely right. But this is the point. When people come over on small boats, which is obviously a very small portion of the total of migration, but they often throw away their documents. I've literally seen TikTok videos of these migrants coming here on a boat, and they are literally literally taking their government documents and throwing them in the ocean. I mean, they're taking our justice system for a joke.
I don't think the 3 nationalities that you're talking about are boat people.
No.
I think
that may be
coming
true.
in legally. And could I just say one other thing, please?
Yeah, please, yeah.
I think this is generic. I'm not surprised it's coming from generic because this is obviously a Brexit ploy to get people turned against the EU. You know, the 3 nationalities, the 3 criminals are all European. That's his viewpoint.
Yeah.
But if we had closer ties with the EU, we wouldn't be in this mess. I mean, we'd have closer ties with their police forces, closer ties with their judiciaries, and we'd know when these people were coming in to stop them.
I don't know.
There's the same problem in Dubai.
You'd have freedom.
Where you get a lot of criminals coming in. And wouldn't that solve it?
OK, Sam, good point. We'd rejoin the EU and
I
we'd
suspect
sort it out.
Most of these criminals came here whilst we were members of the European Union. Of course, we were never part of Schengen, but we did have freedom of movement. So I disagree with Sam on that point. I do think that having closer relationships with those individual countries is helpful, and this is what this information provides.
OK, thanks for all your calls on this later.